It's raw.
$100 billion, and we
The
put
earth
in
is raw.
$350 billion. It's not.
The
it's
earth
not a
is
fair
raw,
thing.
and the minerals are here for the
would
taking.
normally
That's
say,
why
and
Ukraine
I'd
is
say
so
it now
flat.
anyway, but we want equalization.
That's why
They should
Ukraine
put
is
up
so flat,
actually
because of
more
the
money than
raw,
us, because they're right there. We
raw
have an
earth
ocean in between.
minerals.
But we've had very good talks with Russia.
I think one of the funniest parts about this is that, like, I still don't know what these raw earth minerals are. You're right. We need more privatization. Thank God. Here, letters that he's signing.
Which one, last or?
The one that
No, the digital tax is taking place all over Europe. They're taxing us, and they're doing other things. They're suing all our companies. And if that's going to happen, we want to be the ones that sue, not them. And they use it almost as a form of running.
Okay, I'm going to ask that chatter and many other chatters who look at the current Department of Education and go, it's too costly. We pay more per pupil than any of these other nations, and our educational outcomes are shit, okay? The question I have for you is, do you know that other countries exist? Okay? Like Donald Trump loves talking about Norwegian education. Donald Trump even talks about Chinese education and says, they're beating us, they're beating us. What do you think is different in China and Norway and many of these other countries that Donald Trump consistently points to when he talks about education? Do you think it's actually because they have blossoming private sector, private education opportunities? Or do you think it's closer to nationalism or nationalization, sorry, and socialized almost entirely and all publicly funded? It's the second thing. It's not because they have private education. It's actually a lack of private education.
They don't treat us right as a country. So we're going to protect our companies. We have to protect our companies. So we're not going to have any companies left anymore. I also want to thank Apple, though, for announcing they're going to invest $500 billion in our country. That's
in Sweden, a lot is private and for profit. You're wrong. I don't know if you're Swedish or not, but Sweden implemented privatization initiatives and had to go back on them because they immediately saw a drop in educational outcomes. Now they're still going back to privatization in Sweden, okay, after years and years. But ultimately, it is responsible for Swedish education being on a downturn regardless. Sweden is actually a very famous case of privatization being a genuine issue. Hold on. Here, we'll look at it right now. Yeah. Sweden, education minister declares for-profit schools a failure. Swedish expert, the market system is a disaster for students and Sweden. Sweden school minister declares free school system failure. Lotta Edholm aims to limit the profit-making ability of friskolar in her plans for education reform. Sweet here, we have a weird semi-privatized system where private schools are state-funded but still for profit. They take our tax money for profit. No, I know. And this is a real issue in Sweden because I think it was like a decade ago when they first tried to implement this initiative and squashed it, but it never went away. Here it is, okay? From 2015, article that is more than 9 years old, is a decade past. It's a political failure how Sweden's celebrated school system fell into crisis. International ratings have plummeted and inequality is growing after a raft of changes, including in introduction of the voucher system. They literally did school choice. Okay? They implemented school choice in Sweden. SF Dubs, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Anyway, are you familiar with how insane the education system is in the U.S.? Are you aware of the local school board powers and recs? As a teacher, our system is so f***ed up. My school is purposely failing students to get more money, no discipline, and we're becoming more of a diploma factory. I know already 30 students that had GPAs under 1.0 and still graduated. I have students that are at a second grade reading and math that are freshmen. Milton Friedman in shambles when he saw this article in Hell? No, he loves this shit, dude. Are you kidding me? Milton Friedman cares more. He does not have a utilitarian perspective. He cares more about rampant privatization. He is totally in favor of government subsidies as long as they are subsidizing private enterprise. These people's worldview is not about uplifting the entire public. It's entirely about might is right. It's entirely about like rich people getting ahead. He doesn't give a shit. There are so many examples like this in terms of pupil performance in Sweden. And Sweden is a great example of how a country turns reactionary after rampant neoliberal austerity and rampant privatization. Yeah, it's all the Muslims, the gangs that Muslims are committed to. Meanwhile, this kind of stuff is actually what's ruining the quality of life in a country like Sweden. But hey, as long as you focus on the Muslims, things will be, get all the Kurds out of Sweden and then it'll be good.
But
right?
It's rare earths and other things. And look, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine and Russia fighting a war that should have never, ever happened. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. People say, how do we know that it didn't happen for 4 years? Would have never happened. And nevertheless, this guy went into this situation and he spent money like nobody's ever seen, $350 billion. The other thing that we don't like is that Europe has spent $100 billion. We've spent $350 billion. Europe gets their money back because they spent it in the form of a loan, and we just gave them, whether it's 300 or 350 billion, nobody really knows. They can't even tell me the answer to that, but it means probably more than that. So what we're doing is now we're saying, look, we want to be secured. We want to get that money back. We're helping a country through a very, very big problem people have had. Shouldn't have had this problem because it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. So we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
Mr. President, yesterday with Emmanuel Macron, you said you had spoken to Putin about the idea of peacekeepers in Ukraine, that Putin was fine with it. The Kremlin, I guess, has said that that's actually unacceptable to them. What's real here?
That's not what I was.
China, Sweden, Japan, countries with strong social safety nets also have a common relative racial homogeneity. Hard to do social safety nets in a racially diverse country where some groups don't want other races to get the same / any government money spent on them. Yeah, famously China, which is certainly incredibly homogenous. Like, sure, you can say that about Japan. Yeah, just wait, dude. Once we fucking kill all of the brown people, then we'll have socialism. It's so stupid. This is an economic system, okay? It is born out of capitalism. Shut the up. That's just a dumbass lie that capital owners tell you as well, because it's a great distraction. It has nothing to do with racial homogeneity. It's ridiculous.
Mr. President,
that war-fighting equipment and the ammunition, that's sustained going forward for Ukraine, and how long is it sustained?
Well, it could go forward for a while, and maybe until we have a deal with Russia. Look, we need to have a deal with Russia, otherwise it's going to continue. But now when Americans put up their money, the taxpayer money, and the president approves it, we're getting our money back in some form. But it could go on for a while, or it could be settled quickly. I think it's going to be settled quickly. I spoke with President Putin. I think he wants to settle it. And
like, one of the funniest aspects of this also is that, like, what's the most famous example of an implementation of socialist governance? The fucking USSR. It literally is one of the most diverse structures that has ever fucking existed. Like, what the are you talking about? Ridiculous. It's all entirely made up. The notion that, like, brown people are somehow different than the white people in this country is a made up phenomenon, okay? It literally existed throughout time for people that are now comfortably under the banner of white. Irish people, Italian people, Polish people, Jews. They were all, at a certain point, not considered white. Usually, when they were migrating into the United States of America, they were not considered white, okay? Now they're all white. And there are plenty of studies that clearly show that by the second generation, full-blown assimilation takes place. By the third generation, virtually indistinguishable. But by the second generation, you assimilate to America. You are American, okay? The idea that, like, the color of your skin or your ethnic background is some sort of limitation to, social safety nets is moronic. There are plenty of countries that are just as diverse as the United States of America, as a matter of fact, like Canada or even the UK that have way more expansive social safety nets. The real problem in those countries is not the diversity that's ruining these nation states. The real problem is the capitalists that are trying to undermine these social safety nets with the hopes that they can inevitably privatize it down the line.
So it's true. Thank you, Brian. It's true. A lot of people in Canada.
Bro really doesn't think white supremacy has any effect on how politics happen in the U.S. That chatter is right, though.
They'll have.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You know what? You're right. That's why we should kill all of the fucking black and brown people in this country so that maybe one day we can have social safety nets. What kind of fucking stupid argument is this? I'm giving you an example of diverse countries that have better more expansive social safety nets than the United States of America. Are you too dumb to understand that? Yes, white supremacy is a very effective marketing tool for division. No one is saying you should kill them, be so for real. Oh, sorry, we should do remigration? What are you talking about? You're misinterpreting the chatter? No, I'm not misinterpreting the chatter. That chatter is bringing up a dumbass argument that racist Nazis use on a regular fucking basis. The notion that once this is going to... The chatter is right, though. America's history of racism is straight up why social safety nets have been ripped apart in America. Like, it's not necessarily homogeneity, but it's white supremacy. I'm losing my mind. It is the marketing. That is simply the marketing. I know that there's appetite for dumbass white Americans to undermine social safety nets because they think black people are getting a worse go at it. But that doesn't change the reality that it is simply marketing to divide the American public and to ensure that they do not recognize their class divisions, okay? I hate this notion. I hate this argument. Yeah, I know. It is what racists say. The divide is pure propaganda. That chatter thinks it's a rule, okay?
This has been going on for 20 years more in order to take care of a certain species of fish, which wasn't doing very well without water, I can tell you. So that's a big deal. It's like not reported. It's incredible. But California has a lot of water. That's going to take care of farmers. It's going to wetten up the land. And it's going to go all the way down to Los Angeles, where they have curfews on water, where they have all sorts of blocks on water. You can only use so much. We're going to put until just recently, they were going to put a number of gallons per person living in a house in Beverly Hills on water. You're not going to have that problem anymore. Do you have a picture? Let me just see what that looks like. How beautiful is that? Look at that beautiful water flowing. Look at that. That's coming in the dikes and other means of transportation. Isn't that beautiful? Who would believe that? That's all water they could have had. I went to the governor during my first term and I said, why don't you do this? And they said they have an environmental problem with clean water. If this water were there, you wouldn't have had those fires. You had sprinklers. They make people put sprinklers in the ceiling of a home, and they had no water in them. With this, they would have had a lot of water in them. They would have all been full. They would have had you would have had a whole different deal down there. You probably wouldn't have had a fire, but if it was, it would have been put out. You had the fire hydrants not working in California. So it's a beautiful site. These are canals that were built. These were all built, and you saw them for years. They were empty, concrete. They call them the V-shapes or the half pipes.
Incredible. He posted his own tweet.
And they rush down through the farm areas where the farmers can take it and down to Los Angeles. And they were sitting empty for years. And now look at that. Look at that way it looked. It wasn't easy. We had to be very unfriendly to get into those areas. We opened it up.
Mr. President.
I essentially attacked California. Can you believe it? I attacked California. Let's go.
At the outset of your administration, sir, you committed to ending the weaponization of government, to holding those accountable who participated in the weaponization of government.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government and who supported it accountable for what they did.
And you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
Covington and Burlington?
Covington and Burlington.
Mr. President, may I ask you a question about Europe? So long term, do you plan to maintain the number of U.S. troops?
Wait, I just want to savor this one, please. Who would like this pen? Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith? A deranged person.
Mr. President, what do you say to people who worry that targeting an individual firm or individuals who aren't Jack Smith for his actions?
I've been targeted for 4 years, longer than that. Thank you, sir. So you don't tell me about targeting. I was the target of corrupt politicians for 4 years, and then 4 years after that. So don't talk to me about targeting. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, there are approximately 2 million federal employees right now. By the end of your term, what do you expect that number to be? What would you like that number to be?
Well, it'll be lower, but I can't tell you. Everybody knows I ran on downsizing government, but making government better. I ran on tariffs and making our country rich, and that's what's going to do. We're going to be doing something else that's going to be very, very good. We're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful. Never been done before or anything like this, but it's something that we're going to be putting out over the next, would you say 2 weeks out? Do you want to say a couple of words about it?
Sure.
Mr. President, are there any requirements for that gold card? Do you have to invest a certain amount of money in this country in order to qualify for that gold card?
Yeah, exactly.
So the EB-5 program was really, you lend some money, but it was full of nonsense.
American immigration has always been pay to win, Chad.
That was low priced. So the president said, rather than having this sort of ridiculous EB-5 program, we're going to end the EB-5 program. We're going to replace it with the Trump Gold Card, which is really a green card gold. So they'll be able to pay $5 million to the U.S. government. They'll have to go through vetting, of course. We're going to make sure they're wonderful, world-class global citizens. They can come to America.
Okay, they 10x'd it, though. It used to be 500 grand, I think.
And they can invest in America, and we can use that money.
And now instead of green, it's gold because it's Trump.
Why do we give out lotteries of green cards? Why do we give out EB-5 for green cards? The President of the United States understands that the right answer is, why don't we eliminate the deficit of the United States of America?
Oh, it was 1 million? It used to be, I think it was 500,000, but now it's 1 million.
Millions, but the gold card will bring in with it people that create jobs.
No, I think it was 500,000. Now it's 5 million. They 10x'd it.
People in, for instance, you today graduate from the Wharton School of Finance or Harvard or
Chatter's finding out that American migration is pay to win. It has always been pay to win. It's not a new phenomenon at all.
These companies
they
that
just
want to
made
get
it more
people
expensive.
to be working for them will be able to buy a card, and for the people that are number one in their class at top schools, I see that as one of the things. But generally speaking, it'll be people with money and people that create jobs, and they won't have to pay any tax on income outside of the United States, which they're not paying right now. They're not citizens, but they'll have to pay if they create jobs in the United States. They'll pay full taxes like
plenty of countries
else.
have this principle,
so
by the way.
Big taxpayers.
A lot of countries also have a similar structure where you can just like pay to win and get and gain citizenship.
And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example,
You just pay it. You just pay for it.
Cards would be worth
Like a lot of money.
$5 trillion. Wow. And if you sell 10 million of the cards, that's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have 35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. But It could be great. Maybe it will be fantastic. We have it all worked out from the legal standpoint. It's totally legal to do. Hasn't been done before. It's been done in many different forms. We give them away. Why should we give them away? We shouldn't give them away. And I think it's something very exciting. I think it's potentially just something that we're all very excited about. So it's a gold card. It's somewhat like a green card, but at a higher level of sophistication. It's a road to citizenship for people. And essentially people of wealth or people of great talent, where people of wealth pay for those people of talent to get in, meaning companies will pay for people to get in and to have long-term status in the country. And I think it's something we're very, very happy about. Would you have anything to say about that?
Well, many other countries, by the way, do this, including, of course, your 51st state does that.
And the money's earmarked for deficit reduction?
It may be earmarked for deficit, but it actually could be more money than that. I mean, if you did 10 million, it would be, you'd have $15 trillion left over. But generally, it's going to be paid down debt, yes.
Do you need Congress for this? Do you think you need to
No, we
pass
don't
a
need
law?
Congress, no, because we're not doing citizenship, we're doing the card.
I see.
It's a path to citizenship, a very strong path to citizenship, but we're not doing the citizenship. For that, I'd have to get Congress.
And would all countries be eligible for this gold card?
Depends. The countries largely, the people will be vetted very carefully.
Mr. President, on Ukraine, would you provide military support for Ukraine in the future under a peace agreement?
Say it again louder.
Would you provide military support for Ukraine in the future as part
You mean
of
like
a peace
security?
agreement? Yeah.
Well, people are going to do it. I think Europe will largely be responsible for that.
But
European countries will be responsible.
But Macron asked for a U.S. backup.
Well, we'll see. I mean, right now we're just in the process of negotiating. We've pretty much negotiated our deal on raw earth and various other things. We'll be looking at that security. You're talking about general security for Ukraine later on. I don't think that's going to be a problem. There are a lot of people that want to do it. And I spoke with Russia about it. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. So I think they understand. They're not going back in. Once we do this, they're not going back in.
So
Mr. President,
on
on that gold card,
aircraft, would the U.S. provide, for instance, air defense?
Well, I just told you, right now we're not providing anything. You know, it's about Europe, too. Europe put in
It's raw.
$100 billion, and we
The
put
earth
in
is raw.
$350 billion. It's not.
The
it's
earth
not a
is
fair
raw
thing.
and the minerals are here for the
normally
taking. That's
say,
why
and
Ukraine
I
is
say
so
it now
flat.
Anyway, but we want equalization.
That's why
They should
Ukraine
put
is
up
so flat,
actually
because of
more
the
money than us
raw,
because they're right there. We
raw
have an
earth
ocean in between.
minerals.
But we've had very good talks with Russia. We've
I
had
think one
very
of the
good talks
funniest
with
parts about this
Ukraine,
is
and
that,
we
like,
think
I
maybe
still
we'll come
don't
to
know
an end
what
and we'll
these
stop
raw
killing
earth
young
minerals
people all
are.
over the
And
battlefield.
everybody keeps
And
saying, like,
that's-
the last time there was an accurate assessment of these raw earth minerals was, like, during the USSR. So I don't even know how much
We'll be
raw earth
involved.
minerals they
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
have.
We'll be involved in Europe. We're involved in
Raw
Europe.
earth
Europe
minerals.
is our friend. They take advantage of us on trade.
They're
We
so
don't like
raw.
that, what the EU does.
Not
We don't
rare,
like that.
raw.
But we'll solve that
We're going to take them
the
raw.
old-fashioned way. We'll give them the same reciprocal numbers. You know, we're talking about a reciprocal tax.
It's
You
not
know
raw,
that.
buddy. Shut the
And,
fuck up.
If they charge us,
My
we charge them.
president-
Right now, they charge us
My
much,
president-
much more than we charge them.
He's right.
And they have
You're wrong.
non-monetary taxes also and tariffs. And we're going to change that. It's all changing. It's all changing. We're not going to
It's
be
raw
the,
now.
the people that we were. We had
Shut
people
up.
in this office sitting right at this desk or another model of this desk. Because as you know, the other desk is right now being refurbished.
Is Steve Witkoff delaying his trip to the Middle East?
No, not that I know of. No, Steve. And the Middle East has been great. Saudi Arabia has treated us really well. They really have. And I think Qatar has treated us very well too. They want
Is he covering his bruise?
They
Yes,
get
he
that
is.
whole mess ended in the Middle East. You know, we
He
don't
is
even
covering
talk
his
about
bruise.
that
He has a
anymore.
bruise on
You
his
guys haven't
left
asked one
hand.
question about the
I saw
Middle
that
East, but
too. I saw that.
The Middle East
I
seems to
follow
be
all the
going-
lib accounts. Okay, I know all the latest and greatest world technology.
For months, even before you were elected in November, you've spoken about your desire to free all of those hostages that have been held by Hamas since October the 7th, a year and a half ago. And just a few weeks ago, you gave an ultimatum. You said if they're not all released by noon on February the 15th, there would be hell to pay. Is Hamas
He had a long night of
becoming
drinking, so we got the
negotiating
IV.
No, I think the opposite. So As you know, they weren't going to release any more hostages. And I said there's going to be hell to pay. And then they agreed that they were going to release the hostages that they had agreed to release, plus an extra one. And so that you could say that was a big difference. But I said it from that point, it's up to Bibi Netanyahu and Israel. I may have taken a different stance. But they did release, they went back to releasing the hostages. But if you remember, they said we weren't going to release any. They've totally ended it. And I said, well, they're not going to release any. They'll be held to pay. And but the rest is really up to him. What I may have done it differently than him. It's not my decision. It's his decision. But they did release all of those hostages. So.
Mr. President, when you spoke to Vladimir Putin, did he raise or did you discuss at all the possibility of a minerals deal on the Ukrainian land that Russia now controls?
I didn't discuss it. No. I'd like to buy minerals on Russian land too, if we can. The rare earth. They have very good rare earth also. They both do. I would say that. And oil and gas. Look, it's a great thing if we sell this. It's great for Russia too, because we can do deals there. They have very valuable land that isn't utilized. So something like that could take place, yeah.
Have you put raising or lifting sanctions against Russia on the table as your
No, we haven't lifted any sanctions on anybody.
On the table as part of any negotiation?
I guess it will be at some point, but right now we haven't agreed to lift sanctions on anybody.
On that gold card, getting back to that, I'm fascinated by this, Mr. President.
You should be fascinated by it. Your taxes will go down to nothing.
Would a Russian oligarch be eligible for a gold card?
Yeah, possibly. Hey, I know some Russian oligarchs that are very nice people. It's possible. They're not quite as wealthy as they used to be. They're not as wealthy as they used to be. I think they can afford. I think they can afford $5 million.
So
no, a lot of people are going to want to.
A
lot of people are going to want to be in this country, and they'll be able to work and provide jobs and build companies and pay taxes. All of those things. It's an incredible. It's an incredible thing. I mean, this is the group that is the first to hear it. Nobody's heard about it. Nobody ever thought about it, but we've been thinking about it very, very strongly over the last week. And I was going to announce it sometime next week, and I figured, why not? We have a lot of cameras blazing right now. We might as well do it now. We'll have Caroline announce it the next time. No, it's a great thing. The gold card. Remember the words, the gold card. Somebody said, can we call it the Trump gold card? I said, if it helps, use the name Trump. I'll give it to you for free.
I like Mr. President, you probably just launched 10,000 stories. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what Russian oligarchs you know or don't know?
Isn't it interesting how many stories we do tell? And they all turn out to be true, and they all turn out to be ultimately correct. You know, Trump was right about everything. Do you have one of those Trump was right about everything hats? I'm going to give it to this gentleman. Get me one of them.
But they're all going to be vetted. Everybody who comes in gets vetted, okay? They get vetted, so you got to, you know. We're going to begin in 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks. The sale will start in about 2 weeks.
Mr. President, do you see a more active role for Zelensky now, given the status?
I hope so. I mean, look, I think that we want to get that country back on its feet. And right now, it's been destroyed. And so, here, give me this here. Give me all of them. Look. Yes. See that? Trump was right about everything. It just came in. Somebody said, I said,
look, this is a hat that says I'm right.
I said, I think we should make some of them. Right?
This is a clown show, dude.
I'll pass.
An absolute clown show.
I know him well. He's sort of a stiff.
Yeah. What do you got? What do you got? What do you have to say to that? Here's a hat that says I'm right.
Would anybody like one?
Mr. President, an easy question perhaps for you. Maybe it's difficult. I'm going to ask you this question about the
Who do you work for?
I work for 2 news organizations.
Who?
I work for 2 news organizations.
Yeah, who are they?
I work for Gray Television, America's second largest broadcaster, and I work for iHeartRadio. So there you go. But let me ask you the easier, tough question, Mr. President. The Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. Are they being extended an invitation?
They will be. We haven't yet, but we will be. I thought it was a great performance by them. And absolutely, they'll be extended that invitation. Would you do that right away?
He got so mad.
We'll do it right away. We're going to do it sometime today, and they deserve to be down here, and we hope to see them. We have a lot of teams. We just had the great hockey team, as you know, Florida come here. We have Many of the
only
great
an
athletes come
idiot
that
would
win
argue
things.
with a hat.
Well, they have to get together. You know, they've had a lot of discussion back and forth. They both are meaning well, and a deal will ultimately happen. I think it'll happen pretty quickly. It'll be nice to see the golfers, the best golfers, be able to play against each other.
What's your role been in this whole process?
Just to help expedite it. Tiger was here. Adam Scott was here. Jay Monahan was here the other day. Just to really help expedite it. We had Yasser here from Saudi Arabia, great guy. These are all great people, and they want to work it out. So if I can help them work it out, I don't get anything out of it. If I can help them work it out. I just think golf, it's very much of an individual sport, and you want to see the best players playing against each other, not playing in two different locations, right?
What's going to be more challenging, a PGA Live deal or a Russia-Ukraine deal?
I think the PGA deal is much more complicated.
Sir, may I ask the Middle East question, if I may? What's your take on what's happening in the West Bank and what Israel is
Well,
doing
it's
there?
some movement up there that a lot of people are concerned about. And there's been a lot of Israeli movement. They're up there for a reason. All of a sudden, maybe they're not feeling so good about that. So that would be terrible. I hope that doesn't happen. But there is movement up there that nobody knew about. Right? You know that, right?
Yeah, and when you say, are you concerned about it as well?
I'm concerned about everything. I want the world to be peaceful. You know, when I left here, we had no war. We had defeated ISIS in less than 4 weeks. In fact, I took the general that defeated ISIS and I put him in charge of the whole ball game, because that's what we want. We want winners. Raisin Cane, you know, Raisin. When I heard that name, I said, I like that name. That's the kind of general I like. So we'll see. But he was great. He's a great soldier. Not a politician, a soldier, a real soldier. You know that, Brian. This guy was the real. This guy's the
story a million times.
Yeah, this guy's the real deal.
He is.
And I think he's going to do a great job. But think of it. We had no wars. We had no problems. We had no inflation. We had no problems. And then all of a sudden you have October 7th in Israel, which was horrible. And then you see what happened with Ukraine. Russia would have never gone in if the election weren't rigged. It was a rigged election. The 2020 election was rigged. And we got out of it. And you see what happened. You see what happened to our country. Inflation, Afghanistan, that horrible withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think when Russia saw what happened in Afghanistan.
How is it any different than Biden's ramblings? He's more coherent, and he doesn't say habba. And he also if you're asking me like what that's the serious answer. Yes, he is still rambling like an old man, but there's a little bit more charisma to his rambling. And he doesn't look like a fucking decaying carcass.
Expecting at the cabinet meeting tomorrow.
It's going to be a cabinet meeting, and I'll preside. Unlike Biden, I'll preside over my own cabinet meeting.
Mr. President, how would you compare your cabinet in your second term to your cabinet that you had in your first term?
Well, I had some great people my second term. I think this is deeper. I think it's better because it's deeper. I had some people that I didn't really like too much in my cabinet. But I didn't know Washington then. I was a New York person. I knew New York intimately, but I had to rely on people. I had great people. Look, we got the biggest tax cuts in history. I rebuilt the military. I mean, we did so much. We did unbelievable. Even right to try. Somebody was saying today they were saved by right to try. We did right to try medically. We did transparency medically. That was a big thing, but Biden canceled that one. He didn't cancel right to try, which is interesting. He didn't cancel Space Force. He was going to cancel Space Force. Space Force is turning out to be invaluable, amazing. We created Space Force. But think of it. We rebuilt our entire military, and now we're going to have to patch it up a little bit again because of what's happened. No, this was a grossly incompetent administration. The only thing they were good at was cheating in elections and the weaponization of government. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
The lesson to learn from all of this 100% is obviously you need whoever comes in charge. Like if there was I mean, this is kind of laughable, but let's say there's like a revolutionary leadership, a revolutionary change in the Democratic Party, and all of a sudden they're like, genuinely fighting for the expansion of the welfare state, genuinely fighting for the expansion of social safety nets and whatnot. Like, you got to pull that AMLO shit and just straight up yap. You got to be a grade A yapper. Gay. G-A-Y. Grade A yapper. Why talk about an impossibility? Who knows, man? Who knows?